Alphabet recorded its fastest quarter for revenue growth since early 2022. So total revenue was up 13.5%. So total revenue went from quarter ended December 31st, 2022, it was 76 billion, and now it's 86.3 billion. So that is pretty solid. And of course, we have to remember with Google, there's a big breakdown of all the different revenue segments. So I'll go through those reasonably quickly, hopefully. So the first and biggest category is, of course, Google Search. So Google Search was up 12.7% year over year. So now up to $48 billion in revenue. So of the total revenue of $86 billion, 48 of it comes from just Google Search, just ad revenue from Google Search, which is that is the biggest the biggest chunk. Actually, not the biggest chunk. Google service. Oh no, because that gets added together. Yeah, definitely the biggest chunk of their ad revenue. Yep. Sorry, I just had a brain fart.
It's crazy they're still growing at double digits. Like, how's that?
Yeah.
Like, I guess volume, but and ad rates going up as well. But it's just crazy. I think it's actually probably mostly volume. Yeah, but it's
pretty insane still to get that kind of growth.
Yeah.
So YouTube ads. YouTube ads were up 15.5% year over year, but only from 7.9 billion to 9.2 billion, so much less in terms of that revenue category. Then Google Network, so other people hosting Google ads on their own platforms, that was down 2.1%. So that was what, 8.297 billion, whereas before last year it was 8.475 billion in Q4.
Yeah.
And then that leaves us with so total Google advertising, which was up 10.9% year over year. So solid growth overall from Google advertising. And then, of course, we have, on top of their advertising business, we have the subscriptions, the platforms, the devices. That used to be called Google Other, and now they've actually called it. They've teased it out a little bit so that you don't have to remember. And they've called that category Google Subscriptions, Platforms, and Devices. So that category was up 22.7% year over year. So solid growth. It's now up to $10.7 or $10.8 billion in revenue. It was at $8.8 billion in revenue last year for the Q4 of last year. So pretty solid. And that gives us Google services total. So the total of Google services up 12.4%. Year over year.
Right.
Then on top of that, so on top of Google services, we also have Google Cloud as a separate revenue segment, which was up 25.6% year over year. Right. That came in with revenue of 9.2 billion as opposed to 7.3 billion last year. So overall, I think that is pretty solid growth in most areas.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. I think because last year I think their growth was pretty flat, I believe, just off the top of my head. So, it's crazy to see them bounce back in a big way. I always like to check every year just the YouTube ad revenue. It's always interesting to me to see what's like kind of the size of the YouTube ad economy. So I added up all the quarters. So for 2023, it was in total $31.5 billion, which means about 17 billion paid to creators. Which is it's just an astounding figure. It's like, wow, it's like, it doesn't ever feel that big, but it's $17 billion. That's a big industry.
I guess there are a lot of creators now these days.
There is
on YouTube.
Course. Yeah. It's
and I'm sure it's very top heavy.
Yeah, of course. But it's fascinating to see it.
How much
grow.
Mr. Beast is pulling in.
Yeah, I don't know.
He'd be pulling in a lot.
Yeah, he'd be taking
many millions.
But even still, he'd be a pretty small percentage of the total pool
of overall. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, pretty crazy.
Definitely. Yeah. So that's revenue. As I said before, total revenue came in at 86 billion. It's up from 76 billion year over year. And now we talk about operating results, operating income. So, of course, it's one thing to generate revenue, but can you generate profit from that business is the next question. So, the short answer is yes. For Google, they have no problems in that department. But let me tell you more about it anyway. So Google Services came in with operating income of $26.7 billion, up from $20.2 billion year over year. So that is by far their biggest operating income driver. In fact, it makes up more than 100% of their total income from operations, which kind of tells you a little bit about the next categories. However, Google Cloud is no longer the one dragging them down. So for the longest time, Google Cloud was not running profitably. We've spoken in the last couple of quarters how they have just got that profitability and they have maintained that profitability. They generated $864 million in operating profit in the fourth quarter of 2023 versus negative $186 million in the fourth quarter of 2022. Right. Yeah. So good to see. Google Cloud is coming along. Still nothing crazy, but it could be in the future. That is obviously one of their big focuses, but we'll have to see how that goes. And then Other Bets is still not profitable, but the numbers are consistent with what Sundar was saying about how they need to really hone their efforts onto the more profitable segments and forget about the ones that are bleeding money. So they lost just $863 million in Q4 versus $1.2 billion in Q4 of 2022. So
be nice to
overall. Yeah, sorry.
Say it'd be nice to be able to burn $1 billion on just like trying stuff.
Yeah,
$1 billion a year in that.
Burning at $1.2 billion a year,
and it doesn't even
just being like, well, it's fine.
It doesn't even make it's nothing. It's a dot. It's a dot on the map, and they obviously can spawn pretty considerable businesses out of that. So it's just interesting. Yeah, the advantage they have.
That's what I kind of like about Tesla as well, is that when you really analyze their business, it's kind of like 100 different startups. Like like collectively they come together, and obviously the automotive manufacturing business is enormous. But when you actually break down like all the different things they do, like the chip design and the supercomputers and the full self-driving and like all these little things and like insurance, like a little insurance business here and that. It's like a lot. They just put a lot. They have the budget to be able to put enough money behind these ideas that they can genuinely test whether these are like viable big businesses of the future. Yeah. And that's similar to like what Google does as well. Yeah. This could be something we can spend, whereas other companies, if they wanted to start some life extension company and put $500 million towards it, no one can just do that. But a company like Google can be like, yeah, we'll give it a go. And it's not actually that detrimental. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting to watch because I think like eventually any business is going to like plateau in growth. So you always, even when you're growing, you always have to be like just at least on a small scale testing stuff so that you can they can find the next business that's going to fuel the growth. For Google, maybe it's been like Google Cloud is potentially coming through as where the growth will be in the future in their services as kind of ads slows down inevitably. But not yet, I guess.
Yeah, clearly not yet. Although, I don't know. Investors weren't happy. I mean, double-digit growth in most areas. Investors, they were not happy. Alphabet shares slid more than 6% after the company reported earnings. If that just tells you that you can't predict which way stock's going to go post-earnings, I don't know what will. But the only other thing I had to kind of add in for the limited information we've gotten so far from Google was in terms of their headcount. So last year they had 12,000 job cuts, which amounted to roughly 6% of its workforce. And now looking at this most recent data, their current employees at the end of December 2023 was 182,500, down from 190,000 in Q4 2022. Okay. They also note in the earnings release, in January 2023, we announced a reduction of our workforce, and as a result, we recorded employee severance and related charges of $2.1 billion for the 12 months ended December 31st, 2023. In addition, we are taking actions to optimize our global office space. So still working on trimming the fat.
There you go.